In today's show, we're talking Dynasty. We're looking at the top 25 young players from the last 3 draft classes. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. So, doing a Dynasty show today. We're going to be looking at the top 25 players for the last 3 draft classes, not including 2023, although I might sprinkle a little question about that in at some point. We are talking to, of course, as you probably have seen in the description of the show, Noah Rubin from NBC Sports Edge, also doing some Dynasty work on his Substack with a new Dynasty podcast as well. Noah, welcome to the show.
Josh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on here talking Dynasty, talking young guys, really excited about a lot of these classes, so I'm excited to get into it.
I think this is the first time you've been on the show. I know you've been in a bunch of our mock drafts that we did last off-season, but I think this is the first time you've been on, isn't it?
It is.
There you go. Awesome. So Noah, it works at NBC Sports Edge and is doing some dedicated Dynasty stuff as well through his Substack, which you can check out. You can see his Twitter handle there on the screen, Noah Rubin 22. You can go follow him there for more Dynasty-specific information as we start to accumulate way more Dynasty people in the fantasy basketball industry, which is awesome. So what we've done here, and I didn't give Noah a huge amount of time for this, I just said, hey, can you just give me like top 25 players from the last 3 draft classes? And he banged it out really quickly. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through our top 25 players from the 2020, 2021, 2022 draft class, not including this upcoming draft class. We're ranking them from 25 through to 1. We're going to go through it and we'll give our lists here. There was a lot of crossover on our list, which is not all that surprising, but I thought maybe we'd have a few different guys. We did have 2 different players on our lists. But we'll get to talking about the players in more detail when we get to whichever of us has them higher ranked. So let's start with our number 25s, which we're not going to talk about in detail right now because we'll talk about them later. I had at number 25, Tyrese. Noah at number 25 had Jalen Duren. So that's how we start things off. All right, you're intrigued a little bit there? Let's go to the next one. At 24, I had Trey Murphy. At 24, Noah just deciding to double down on Jalen's. He had Jalen Green. At 23, I had Devin Vassell. And at 23, he had Mark Williams. Is there anyone we're going to talk about? Yeah, we are going to talk in a second here because at number 22, I had Mark Williams. So that means that Mark Williams is the first player we're going to dig into here. I had him 22, you had him 23. He's 21 years of age. He was a rookie last season. He showed plenty when he was a starter. Noah, I think people will look at it and know that this is a big man with really good fantasy skill set. So why do you have him, and I have him at 22, why is he only down this low?
Yeah, I mean, I have him at 23. I think he was kind of among the big men. I had him second lowest in my top 25, just a little bit above Jalen Duren, but he's got good shot blocking upside and rebounding upside. He had, as a rookie, rebounding percentage of 19.6, block percentage of 4.7. There's not a ton of rookies that can compare with that. The only one probably is Walker Kessler, and big guys that can rebound and block shots and aren't necessarily free throw liabilities are hard to find.
They are. They're really useful. Now, the reason that I had him obviously at 22, 23, so it's about the same spot. I think we also got to really get into the mindset with some of this stuff is it's not just about whether they're rookies or not. Some of that's important, but age is also a factor too. And you'll see that with a lot of these guys, that you will see someone that's in year 3 that's 25 years of age, and then someone who's in year 1 and they're 19 years of age still. And it is a significant difference in that. And it's not that like the old players can't be successful. It's that you've got, by the time that someone who's 19 hits to age 25, they've got 6 years of development to get to that area. So I tend to, and I don't know how you approach this, but I tended to weigh age relatively importantly. I also think that when we get to the guys who have been playing 3 years in the NBA, you're either established or my hope in you getting to that spot is a little bit lower. So what I mean by saying that is that I'll probably have a few more rookies in my list because I don't know where they're going to turn out. I've got some hope in them developing, but I don't have them higher because I don't know that they get there. Whereas the guys who are more established in the league, I know what they can do. I know where they are. There's less of them, or fewer of them to use proper English, but they're a little bit higher because they've established it already. Is that the sort of mindset that you approached it with?
Yeah, I have to be careful that I'm not getting too much into that mindset and just looking only at age and just trying to get as young as possible, because I've definitely done that in a lot of my leagues. I think a guy like Jalen Williams is a great example, which I know we'll get into him a little bit later, about a guy that was an older rookie that shined at his first season, is going to be very good for a long time. So that's somebody that I would usually kind of look over. Now I've kind of learned my lesson and need to make sure I don't do that.
Yeah, but that's true. That's a great example. But you could also say the same about Ochai Agbaji. And he didn't even sniff anywhere close to this top 25 for me. I don't even know if he was in the top 50 players for me over the last 3 years. And he came in as NBA ready at a draft pick that was 2 behind Jalen Williams and was a year older. And I wouldn't even touch him anywhere close to this list. And we can always pick out those examples of those older players. But I think just in general, when you're looking at guys and talents and skill sets and fantasy ability, if they're close, just give me the guy that's 3 years younger. Because in 3 years' time, will he be he could easily be at, exceeding the level of the guy who's already at 22 or whatever who he is. That's a Keegan Murray discussion, for example. We'll talk about him a little bit later on, is that he's already at this age. It's great, good production, but there are guys who are 2-3 years younger who, by the time they hit year 4 in the NBA, are they going to be better than what he currently is now? I don't know. And that's all debatable in Dynasty, and there's a lot of ways to approach that. Now, let's go to our next one, because the next one is Trey Murphy. I had him at 24. You had him at number 22, so he's our second player we're going to dig into here. Trey was really strong down the stretch this year, Noah. He's almost 23. He's had 2 years in the NBA. I worry a little bit. I really like Trey as a player. I think he's a better prospect for them than Herb Jones, and we both agree because he's on this list and Herb Jones isn't for us, and I think he's got some real fantasy upside. But how do you envisage, let's say, for example, Zion plays 65 games. Where does Trey fit in that role? Because Zion and Ingram, they're not going anywhere. So how does Trey fit?
And that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, he was 43rd, according to y'all, Basketball Monster this past season, played 80 games. Did Brandon Ingram and Zion sniff that? No. Are they going to? Who knows? Is Herb Jones fixed in as a starter? It's a lot of questions that I guess we got to kind of know those before we are able to truly evaluate. I still see him with all that upside, and the reason I didn't have him higher is because of that uncertainty with that team.
Yeah, it's exactly right. He was great. He played those games, but then you look at Ingram played 46 and Zion played, I don't know, some stupidly small number, 29. So those guys, they get 77 combined. Now we can say that they're both injury prone and they get injuries a lot, and that's true. But I also think that when we're looking at future seasons, if we're going to say, hey, we expect 77 combined games from Ingram and Zion, that's just not a realistic thing every season to happen, I don't think. So what Murphy was able to do this season, while there will be improvement, you would have to think the opportunities he was afforded this season just won't be anywhere near the average of the opportunities he's provided. Because if we get 60 out of Ingram and 60 out of Williamson, well, that means that there is far fewer games. That's from 75 games down to 120 games of those guys playing. And that's 50 extra games that Murphy's got to play with the both of them. And that impacts things quite a bit. And we don't think that any of these players are really going anywhere. And that does put a little bit of a ceiling on him. Again, a little bit older at age 23. We really like what he does, but I wouldn't be shocked, Noah, if this was the best season that Murphy has out of the next, say, 2 to 3 seasons in terms of just pure, unadulterated fantasy rank. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't hit this mark for another 2 to 3 years.
I wouldn't be necessarily shocked either. I think the thing that helps him is that he does have a pretty low usage percentage, even with
That's
the
true.
high minutes, because he's playing alongside a guy like CJ McCollum that still has the ball in his hands a lot. He's good off the ball and playing against ball dominant stars. I think he can definitely fit in well. Will he get over 30 minutes a game consistently? We'll just have to see.
I think he can. I think he can get 30, but will he play 37, 38? And the other thing is CJ is you can say, well, CJ won't be there long term, and I agree. But the player that replaces CJ likely won't be someone who comes in with 16 usage or something like that. It'll be someone similar who handles the ball and plays point guard, and most point guards in the NBA are above average to high usage players. So it's not like, and people often have this thought with, McCollum's gone, so that's fine, but somebody does have to replace him in that lineup because they're not going to be playing Trey Murphy exclusively at point guard or Ingram exclusively at point guard. There'll be someone else who has to jump into that slot, and then that person takes their shots and opportunities and all that sort of stuff is a part of it. We'll get back to the rest of our players in a second, but today's episode is brought to you by the folks over at eBay Motors. You're building a championship team. It's all about making sure each player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that your part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
Broncos country, let's ride.
eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to US customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, so let's go to the next part of our list, Noah. At 21, I had Onyeka Okongwu. At 21, you had Benedict Mathurin. Now, I won't talk about Okongwu now. I'll talk about him later. Let's talk about Mathurin because I didn't have him in my top 25, and people will think that's controversial. And this is always the problem with lists is they're very, I don't know if binary is the right word, where you go, well, how come he's not in your top 25? I could have had 30 players in my last 7 spots almost. That's the closeness of these guys. Mathurin was given lots of opportunities this season to me. He didn't show to be a particularly great fantasy option. He will improve as the years go on. I just really found it hard to slot him ahead of the other guys that I had there. I think I had him 26th or 27th, so it wasn't that far out. But you are obviously a little higher on Mathurin than I am. There were encouraging signs, but what do you think, like how high do you think he goes, or how high can he get to in a fantasy season over the next 5 years?
I think the main reason that I'm higher on him is because of Rhett Bauer from Sports Ethos. He's obviously a Pacers fan, but he's hyped me up on Mathurin, and he showed me this comparison of him to Jaylen Brown, and looking at their advanced stats from their rookie seasons, eerily similar. So I think Mathurin can probably get to a top 40 finish in 9-cap formats. And with Indiana, I think with the team they have now, he profiles as a leading scorer at some point in his career. I think the lottery over the next season or two can impact that and how quickly they get back to the postseason. But I like the way his skill set profiles.
Yeah, look, to me, he was strong, and I loved his free throw drawing ability. That was really, really positive. I worried about the efficiency stuff. I worried about how else you contribute in other areas. That's a concern. And the thing I look at here is if they get pick 2 or pick 3 and they get Scoot or they get Brandon Miller or they get Amen Thompson, then those players next to Tyrese Haliburton push Mathurin down the pecking order a fair bit. And unless he is the high usage, number 1 usage player, I'm not really sure where he gets there. And they have a real chance of bringing someone else in who's going to be that guy ahead of him, pushing him to a similar role that he was in this season, where he was pretty solid with usage, but he didn't be that number 1 overall guy. So that's, I guess, my worry there with him. That I think if you look at a team with him as the number 1 and Haliburton as the best player, but not the number 1 usage guy, I don't know how far you actually get with that squad. So I think that you'd always be looking to, well, he's good, but we want someone different in that role, and that always pushes him a little bit down for me. Now, in saying that, we've got a couple of players we're going to talk about here. The guy that I had in my top 25 that you didn't was Shaedon Sharpe. And I had him at number 20. You had Tari Eason at 20, who I had back at 25. So I had Shaedon Sharpe here. People will say, Josh, what's the difference with Shaedon Sharpe and Benedict Mathurin and having them in this position? And my answer to that would be, well, I just think I like Sharpe a little bit more. He's a little bit bigger. I think that he's obviously more athletic. He's younger. He's a year younger as well. I'm not getting completely swayed by what I saw at the end of the year, but I was highly encouraged by it. And I sort of know things about the Blazers and the way that they're looking to plan out. And I do think they're going to be but really focusing a lot on what Shaedon Sharpe is going to bring. And while I'm not super confident that he can be a number 1 guy in 4 or 5 years, I am a little bit more confident in him doing it than Mathurin doing it. So, Noah, where do you sit on Sharpe? Was it tough to leave him out of your top 25?
Yeah, he was a guy I had on my initial list, and when I was cutting it down to 25, he was one of the last 2 the 2 guys that I didn't have on my list that you did in Sharpe, and I guess we'll get to the other one, but I had them very close. He's a guy very athletic, very talented. I think some of the defensive upside is not exactly where I'd want it to be. Steal percentage of 1.0, block percentage of 1.2, which I'll admit is a little higher than Mathurin was as a rookie. But I looked at his numbers when he was starting before they started just shifting to a tank, and they just weren't as good as, the silly season numbers when he was averaging 25 or whatever he was averaging. So I worry about that situation a little bit more. I think Indiana's more on the path of a rebuild, whereas Portland has been kind of teetering between, are they starting over, or are they just going to try and run it back with Dame and not run from the grind?
I completely understand all of that. I just like Sharp a little bit. I think part of this also, I think you've got to go back to your pre-draft evaluations a little bit. I had Sharp higher than Mathurin in my pre-draft prospect evaluations. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I had him higher. So nothing that happened this season makes me want to completely reverse course on that. So I'll just say, well, this is what I thought Sharp was. I thought he proved enough to say that that's not a foolish conclusion to draw. So I stuck with him. And then we go to Tari Eason, who I had at 25, you had at number 20. He is, again, a little bit older, 22. We saw what he was able to do in limited minutes. I do think he's going to be one of those guys that for many years, Noah, we go, man, if only he plays these minutes, if only he gets this role. And I think he will get that role at some point, but I think part of the worry for me with Eason, and you've got him 5 spots higher than me, it's not that big of a difference, but part of my worry is that he'll have these little runs, but I don't know if there's 10-year stardom with Eason. There might be a 4 or 5 year period of being really good, but it's always going to be, but what if he did this? Or what if he got these minutes? And I'm not sure that everything for him will tie in to allow that to happen consistently.
Yeah, I definitely get that with Houston. I think, honestly, the Udoka signing as the head coach, I liked what he did in Boston with the defense, and I think that Eason, being kind of a defense-first guy, can help him get minutes quicker than he did in his rookie season. And if you look at the advanced stats with steal percentages, block percentages, as well as just player efficiency rating, I think I did a stats thread on Twitter about it, better than Kawhi and Paul George and OG Anunoby as rookies. So I think, like you said, is this guy going to get the minutes? Is he going to get the chance to show us his talent?
Is there enough in him to be good enough offensively to maintain those big minutes? Because at the moment, like, he's behind Şengün and Smith, and can he play the three? Can the shooting become reliable enough? Or is he just going to always hover as a 24, 25 minute a night guy? I'm not sure. I think he's really good. Like, I've got him ahead of Benedict Mathurin, who many people would say that's silly to have him there. Like, I had him in my top 25. I'm a little cautious because if he was coming in and playing 30, we knew, like, man, the offense is there, the shooting's there, like, that's probably almost a top 10 guy, to be honest, with what he brings across the fantasy landscape. But I'm not convinced that there's going to be that level from him because remember, I don't know how much you remember a guy called KJ McDaniels, who came in with these insane steal and block numbers in his first season in Philadelphia, flying all over the court. Now, Eason's a much better player and always was a much better prospect, but McDaniels had all these flashes, this unbelievable fantasy upside, and just was out of the league in 2 years. That's not Eason, but you need to be able to bring a little bit more offensively, a little bit more reliability with the shooting to absolutely stamp yourself in that huge role moving forward. Now let's go to our number 19s. I had Jabari Smith Jr. You had Keegan Murray. And controversially, I didn't actually have Keegan in my top 25. And part of the reason for that is he's going to be 23 by the start of next season. You had him 19. I didn't have him ranked. I didn't have him far outside. But I had Mathurin 26th. I didn't have Murray 27th. I had a couple of other guys ahead of him. I think what he did this season was pretty solid, but it was inconsistent. Yes, he did hit a lot of threes and he fit perfectly what the Kings needed, and he had some up and down moments in the playoffs, and I've got no problem with him being in the top 20. To me, I don't actually know if there is, like, I know it's an easy comparison because they play together, but is he ever better than what Harrison Barnes was as a fantasy player throughout his career? And to me, there's no upside in that, really.
Yeah, I think for me, the reason I had him where I had him is the fact that he's already done it. I think some of these guys on this list, especially at the top, it's guys that have upside and have already done it. He's done it. I don't know how much upside because of the age, but he's proven that he's a starter on a division-winning team. And the three-point rookie record, I mean, that's not easy to beat out some of the guys that he beat out for that. So if he's spending 10 to 15 years kind of providing solid value all around, but most of it comes from three-pointers and improved efficiency as he plays more in the league, I think that's enough for me to have him where I have him.
Look, I completely understand that. And I look at my list and go, look, it's pretty stupid, Josh, that you don't have him in there. But I also go, like, okay, so who am I taking out? Could I take Tari Eason out? I think Tari Eason's upside is actually a little bit higher, but the median outcome probably does favour Keegan Murray there. Could I have him over Trey Murphy? Well, Murphy was significantly better than him this season, and they're the same age, so don't think so. Where does he fit? Like, there are other guys that haven't produced. Like, I don't know. The list is actually really stacked when we get through it. And like, there's a lot of unbelievably good players. So you've got him at 19. I don't have him ranked, but the guys ahead of him, it's really hard to make that argument absolutely to say he should 100% be ahead of these guys because there's just tons of talent on this list. I had Jalen Green at number 18. You had Jabari Smith at number 18. Both players that we've already, not discussed, that we've already brought up in our list. So let's go through them individually. I had Jalen Green at 18. You had him at 24. He's 21. He's played 2 years. He was pretty disappointing, I think, this season. But I also think that this team obviously is a train wreck team. He shows an ability to score and carry a high usage role as a young player on a rudderless team. I have some concerns with passing and defense and all that sort of stuff. But to me, it doesn't take much for him to be able to be a consistent top 40 player. It probably takes an extra 2 to 3 percentage points. It takes half a steal, and it might take an assist a game. It doesn't take a huge amount. Now, you're obviously lower on Green. So are you just soured by what you saw this season?
I think a little bit. I think I expect him to take more of a leap in year 2. I think, again, like I said with Eason, and I'll probably say it for the other Rockets as well, I like the Udoka hire in the sense that it kind of shows that they mean business a little bit. He's going to bring defense. He's going to make Jalen Green kind of take the game a little bit more seriously. I think there's a lot of comments surrounding that team about culture. So, and then for me, like you kind of mentioned with Eason versus Murray, the upside might be higher for Eason, but the median might be better for Keegan Murray. I think Jalen Green has so much upside, but does he ever get to that level of efficiency that it takes to be a consistent top 40 guy? I think I'm less of a believer than I was before.
Now, these player comps aren't accurate or really anything to hang your hat on, but I see that when we look at Green, I think best case is Donovan Mitchell, maybe Jamal Murray, sort of a player, whereas ranking him at this spot, like, are you looking at inefficient scorer Jordan Clarkson sort of style? Like, where do you think he gets to?
In my mind, his peak was always Bradley Beal. And I think that was because Beal was having around first-round seasons while averaging 30 a game.
Yep.
And I think when Green was a rookie, I said, okay, like at his peak, he can average 30 a game and be efficient. I don't really see that from him anymore. I think 24 with 45% field goal percentage is probably what I see.
I can see 27 with 45% shooting. I think the difference for him and Beal is Beal can be a 6.5 assist player, and I'm not sure Green's got that. But also in Beal's first 2 years, there's no way we would have said, hey, this bloke's going to average 6 assists a game. He was nowhere near that. He didn't have any sort of point guard ability during that time. So I don't know that they've been trying to develop some of that. And that's happened with Zach LaVine as well as a rookie. Like, you go, well, this guy can't pass ever. And he has consistent 4.5, 5 assist seasons. I think Green can get there. I'm a little bit higher on him than you. And Jabari Smith were both about the same. I had him 19th, you had him 18th. He just couldn't shoot really for most of the season. A lot of the big steal and block numbers that he had in Auburn didn't 100% translate. But if it does all click, this is a perennial top 30 fantasy player that can be 17 and 8, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks, 2.5 threes, which is incredibly valuable. Now, nothing seemed to work for him for most of this season, but coaching, we're just going to go coaching. It was bad. He was young. He's still really young. He just turned 20. This could look foolish for me either way. Like, he could just never be able to shoot, or he could be the best, one of the 5 best players in this group, I think.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I put him where I did, is because it's somewhere in the middle between just totally burning out or totally excelling. It's the profile for me, like that you mentioned, threes, defensive numbers, rebounds, and they spent the number 3 overall pick on him. They're going to give him more chances than they would a guy that was end the lottery or late first round to try and make things work. So even if the rookie season didn't go as well as we kind of expected or hope, he's going to have plenty of time to fix that.
Well, we saw that this season because Tari Eason was clearly a better player than Jabari Smith this season, but it was Smith who got all the minutes and not Eason. So that's the draft capital part of it, and it's the age and it's the development, all that sort of stuff. But Eason, if you just look at what they did this season, clearly outplayed Jabari Smith basically every game they played together. Not every one of them, because there was a couple of stinkers from Eason, especially down the end. But in general, he was better than him. And the minutes all went to Jabari Smith. Let's look at the next group of guys. At number 17, I had Jaden Ivey. At 17, you had Onyeka Okongwu. I had Okongwu further down my list, but I don't see Jaden Ivey on your list, Noah.
Yeah, I think I like him more as a player than I do as a fantasy player per se. He had really high usage as a rookie because Cade Cunningham was injured and because Bojan Bogdanovic didn't play down the stretch, and they kind of pulled the plug halfway through the season. So they just kind of let him do whatever he wanted. I just don't know, does he ever get the assists up higher than what they were? Do they ever reach what they were as a rookie? Is he doing stuff defensively? Are they getting another guard in the lottery? There's a lot of questions that I have surrounding him that I love his talent. And I think Detroit has a lot of talent that they just need to kind of figure out what they're doing with. And some of the questions surrounding what they're doing, my uncertainty around Jaden Ivey is why I didn't have him in the top 25. But like I said, he was probably around 27. He's not a bad talent. He's a guy that I'm totally okay with you having at 17. I don't have any issues with it.
This is part of my discussion. What I said earlier is that like I'm going to prioritize a little bit on the younger guys and the guys who've only played 1 year because we don't know. Like if this was Jaden Ivey doing what he did this season and it was the end of his third year, I'd go, well, look, like it's just not, I don't think it's going to happen. Like he hasn't established himself in this huge role. He only does things when a million players are out. So I'm just not buying into that as ongoing production. But yeah, I know that he put most of his numbers up, but I had him as the fourth player in this draft class, not necessarily for fantasy, but the fourth player. I thought Detroit got him in a good spot. Yes, there are, like, I don't know how it works with Cade, but I think some of his decision-making and passing did improve towards the end of the season, not just assist numbers. The efficiency was improved at points. I just have a little bit of faith in a guy that can be that fast, that explosive, showed some improvements in his understanding and the game slowing down. I don't think he's this, but I wouldn't be shocked if we get a year 3 not next year, the year before, like a year 3 Darius Garland type improvement, or even what Darius Garland did in year 2 happens for him this season, just after being one of the worst players in the NBA, stepping up to being, you're actually not too bad, and then turning into, no, you're actually really good. Wouldn't be shocked if we get that trajectory from Jaden Ivey. I just like the speed, the talent, the ability to take on that extra. Some people, there are players that know that when they're given the extra role, they can't do it. Like they just never show an ability to ramp up what they do. But the fact that he did it, and did it pretty well, even if he doesn't do that all the time, is an encouraging sign to me. The other guy we had here is Onyeka Okongwu. You had him at 17. I had him at 21. This is 3 years in for Okongwu. He's only 22. I really like Okongwu in the draft. I really like him now. The fact that he's still been stuck as a backup is frustrating. I have absolutely zeroed out there will be multiple top 40 seasons for Okongwu coming up, probably as early as this season. You are, I believe, in Atlanta and see Okongwu up close. I really like him. I had him 21. There is an argument that out of the guys on this list, he will be ranked ahead of you've got him 17, even the guys, he could be ranked ahead of 6 or 7 of them next season. I think there's going to be big numbers coming. I worry a little bit about, is this a long-term star fantasy player, or is a 4 or 5 year window of him being this guy? And then part of my analysis in Dynasty is like, is he replaceable? Like if a elite center prospect came out, would they say, nah, we've got Onyeka, or would they be like, nah, like move on? And part of that is where I go, because you never know what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years. Like if they made a trade and got, say, Karl Anthony Towns, would they play Towns at center and limit Okongwu again? Like that sort of debate is where I have, has he got that overall, you are the guy, don't worry about center anymore?
Yeah, and I think having watched pretty much every game he's played, my concern really for him is how quickly do they move on from Capella? Is it finally the year that they make him the starter? Do they wait one more year now that they kind of have they've pushed their chips in a little bit? But I like what they're doing with Okongwu. They started, once Quinn Snyder took over, trying to get him a couple of 3-point looks. They're trying to expand his range. He's not as much of a free throw liability as Capella. I think even if it's not next season, it's probably the year after. Hopefully it's not much past that, but he's a guy that as a rookie the only rookies that had higher block percentages for bigs were Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler. So slightly better. Jaren Jackson Jr. was slightly better as a rookie. That's a pretty good shot blocker, I think, to be compared to. So
I think he's really good. Like I really like him. And now I look at this list and I see who, the guys that I had here, and we'll just get to that list now. Like I got Tyrese Maxey at 16, and I go, I'm not sure that I would take Maxey over Okongwu. That's how sort of close I've got this. But I think part of it, and we both had Tyrese Maxey at 16 here, so we can just talk about that now. Part of it is that I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm under the impression that James Harden maybe isn't going to be in Philadelphia next season, and that means that Maxey's going to get sky-high usage, increased assist rate, and while he doesn't necessarily pass the are we set at this position test, I think that we are going to have number 2 option Maxey for the next few years and get some pretty good numbers out of him.
Yeah, I think Harden leaving or not is definitely a big question. I personally thought that they were going to kind of flame out in the second round against Boston, but then they went and stole game 1. So maybe Harden sticks around if things go pretty well. But I think Maxey too finishes kind of around the top 60 in category leagues, but he's only 22, going to be 23 soon. So he's a guy that I don't know how much better he gets, but if he's going to be a top 60, top 75 guy for the next 10 years, I think that's pretty good.
I think he can get better just through usage, really. Like, you can see 4 to 5 extra usage points if Harden isn't there. And even if Harden doesn't leave in fantasy, like Harden's 34 or whatever, like there is going to be a tapering here. And I just think that we are, again, he doesn't pass the we are set test for me, but I think we're going to get some pretty good numbers out of him. But again, I could look at this tomorrow and go, I'd rather have a Okongwu up at 16 and Maxey down lower. I get that totally. At number 15, I had Jalen Duren. You had Franz Wagner. You had Duren way down at number 25. Am I overrating him a little bit? Probably. Am I overrating the competency in Detroit? Probably 100% there as well. But new coach in place, I don't think that Wiseman or Bagley are impacting Duren. I rate Duren higher than Mark Williams. I also know that this bloke is not turning 20 until December, so he is younger than plenty of incoming rookies as well. He flashed enough to me to say that you can feel pretty comfortable about relying on him as a 28-minute-a-night player. I feel pretty comfortable that he can play alongside Victor Wembanyama if that's what ends up happening for them in the draft. He doesn't require usage. His shot blocking numbers were down. I think they can go pretty high moving forward. I think he's just a little bit better upside player with some passing upside, which he flashed as well. I just think that there is. I feel more secure in if I had him on my team versus say a Mark Williams on my team to be a 10-year starter.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons for me. The rebounding is great. The age is great. Being in Detroit is not. I think a lack of shot blocking is a bit of a concern. You only had a 3.1% block rate as a rookie, which is worse than a lot of other rookies that I kind of see as similar players. So is he a guy that could shoot a high percentage from the floor, a low percentage from the free throw line, but not shoot a ton of them and just grab a bunch of boards? Yeah. Is Detroit going to start him over Wiseman and Marvin Bagley? I would hope so. I guess it kind of depends on this coaching hire. I think that's a big element for me.
Part of the age argument that I use is like, I know that it's not everything and older players and they're not that old and all that sort of stuff, but he's 3 years younger than Onyeka Okongwu. So we could be sitting here in the year 2026 and we're at the same stage in Duren's career that we are in Okongwu's career. And like, where is he by then? Like that's the difference there, is that you've got, like, he's already flashing enough and we're already discussing him in the same area as these guys, but he's 3 years behind them. And the improvement, like, you get year on year as players get used to the NBA and as he's going to get stronger. Like, he's already strong. He is going to get stronger as we move forward. So I just think you've got so much to play with there. Like, you're already getting a solid baseline. What when he gets to 24 in 5 years' time? Like, what's he going to, like, maybe he's nothing, but I think that there is just so much room here. He's two years younger than Mark Williams as well. So
yeah, I think
they're equivalent.
There's just so much unknown.
They're equivalent, like in what they're doing now, but the development should push him high at a very young age. That's why, look, again, it might not work, but I'm giving myself that, by putting him this high, giving myself that little bit of runway to say, well, let's see what happens. Like, again, it's not always about years experience. You got to factor all of that in, but man, he's so young. The next bunch of guys we'll talk about in a second. I had Desmond Bane 14 and Scotty Barnes 13. You had Josh Giddey 14 and Devin Vassell 13. So there's a pretty big discrepancy because I had Vassell down at 23. I really like Devin Vassell. He's in his third year. He's 23 years of age at the start of next season. That's a big discrepancy there. The knee injury doesn't really worry me at all. I like what Vassell can do. I think that he can have multiple top 70 fantasy seasons. I'm just not sure that and we're getting into the upper echelon of players here, Noah. So my hesitation with having him this high, and I did have him at 20 at one point and moved him back down. I think even at 19. I just don't know how. Like, can you push ahead? Are you ever on a team where you are the man and you will be the man, or are you always destined to be? Maybe you're the best player on a bad team for 1 year and then you settle in as the third best guy as the team becomes better, and that leaves me a little bit cool on his overall value compared to these other players.
Yeah, I like him as he can kind of do a bit of everything. He's a 3-level scorer. For fantasy purposes, he can hit a lot of threes. He can provide defensive value. I think it's more of watching what he can do with blocks rather than the actual block production. So I think when he's finally at a point where he's not an offensive, like, focal point where he's not the number 1 or number 2 scoring option. I think a number 3 scoring option is still fine for him. Then he can do more defensively, improve on his efficiency. But I think he's the guy that it's hard to take him out of the rotation because he does a lot of things well. And I think he's going to be in San Antonio for a very long time. And just the threes and defense, I think that kind of helps him out a lot for me.
I think he's got higher upside than this player that I'm about to mention, and I think he's going to be better than this player. But there's a little bit of the Miami Josh Richardsons to me with Devin Vassell, where like it's the situation puts up some really interesting numbers, and then when you have to scale back, the other stuff doesn't necessarily carry you far enough. Again, I really like Vassell. I think he's a very good player. I think he is the Spurs' best player at this point in time, but I just worry a little about where the overall upside pushes us. In year 3, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from him this season. Still really impressed, but it was hard to get him any higher for me. All right. At number 12, I had Franz Wagner and you had Alperen Şengün. That means it's time to talk Wagner because you had him at 15. He's 21, 2 years experience for Wagner. I'm a little bit in the Wagner camp with the way I just spoke about Vassell. Like, he's really good. I think he's better than Vassell already. I think you could make the argument pretty clearly that he was the Magic's best player for majority of this season, even though they had the Rookie of the Year. But I worry about the way that he plays a team game. Is that, does he ever force and establish himself to be a guy that is averaging 22, 23 a game routinely, or does he sit back and just give you 17, 7 and 4 with a steal every season, which is still valuable, but can you ever push higher than that? So from what he's done and what I think of him as a player, I probably could have had him higher. Now, you're obviously a little bit lower on him than me, but like, do you have some of those similar concerns about Wagner?
No, I don't. I thought I was a huge Franz Wagner fan, but you actually have him higher than me, so I was a little disappointed when I saw that. I felt like I need to put him up a little higher, but I like that he does a little bit of everything already. And another thing that I really love is his durability. He's missed 5 career games through 2 seasons, which is already, in today's NBA, it's kind of hard to find somebody that pretty much plays all the time. So that passiveness, I think, is something that I was a little bit concerned about as well. But I think the overall talent will play out, especially as they get to be more of a playoff team, which could happen as soon as next season.
The interesting thing with this team is if they get Brandon Miller or Victor Wembanyama, like there's Banchero there, there's Carter there, there's Wagner there, like, do they play him full-time at the 2? Does he sit behind Miller and Banchero? Like, is he good enough to establish himself in there? I don't know. I really like him. And I think that the injury thing is interesting because he played through multiple injuries this season. He had a thumb issue for a big chunk and he had an ankle injury as well. And that did impact some of his percentages. So I do really like him. And I think initially had him in the top 10 and then I pushed him back down because I just worried about, is there that overall, can you ever have a 30 usage season, or can you do enough in those other areas to make up for being a 25, 26 usage player? Like, can you be 1.5 steals? Can you be 5 assists, 8 rebounds? And I think you can, but I'm not convinced of it. And here's where we get to some interesting ones. At number 11, I had Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams hasn't come up for you yet, so he's higher. And then at 11, you had Desmond Bane. Very interesting stuff. Let's talk Bane. I had him at 14. You had him at 11. He is 25. 3 years experience. That is probably... Look, initially when I did it, he was up at like 7, just because of what he's done already, and there's no reason to suggest that he can't keep doing that. But that's a big difference. Like when we look at everyone else on my list, they're 20 or 21 who's ahead of him here. And that's 4 years difference. So when those players, names that we haven't mentioned, like even Franz Wagner or Scotty Barnes or Evan Mobley and Cade Cunningham, in 4 years' time, where are they? Like, what do they look like? Or does this top Bane out? So you've got him a little bit higher than me. Do you think he improves from here? Or are you just going, well, I know what he does. I know he's going to continue to do it. Even if it is only for 5 more years at this level, that's enough.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that he's already produced so well in years 2 and 3 after a not great rookie season, but the past 2 seasons being a top 40 guy. And the main thing that I really like, Dylan Brooks is gone. He's going to get more shot opportunities, which is going to help him even more. If he's a top 40 guy, at least, if not slightly better for the next 5 to 7 years, like you said, that's good enough for me to have him at 11 because it's kind of more of a guarantee. I think it's me just a balance between what's a guarantee and how much upside somebody has throughout the rankings.
That's exactly it, because I've got no problem with saying, like, at the very worst, he's a top 50 guy for 5 years. Like, I don't think there's any concern with that. Can he top out at top 25? Maybe. Can he get to top 10? Almost no chance. Or even top 15, I don't really see that as being a possibility for Bane. So look, that's again, what are you valuing? Are you trying to hit on that upper end guy? You're just going, well, give me, I know what I'm getting, and let's just push it through and do it for 5 more years, which is still insanely valuable. So normally, an age 25 player in year 3, I probably would have even had him as high as 14. I was going, these other guys have still got 4 years to catch up to you, but he's done it. He's going to continue to do it. Nothing suggests that he won't. It's pretty good. Let's get into our top 10. At 10, I had Walker Kessler. At 10, you had Jalen Williams. So that brings us to talk about Jalen Williams. I had him at 11, you had him at 10. He just turned 22. He's 1 year in. He was like a top 25 player through fantasy playoffs after not really doing a huge amount early in the season, the first month or so. Based on everything he did and how great he was down the stretch, plenty of people could argue that he should be higher than this. Noah, I guess part of not even a concern, but part of it is like this team has just got so many options. They're going to bring in another lottery pick. They're going to bring in Chet Holmgren. So where does Jalen Williams fit? Is he their second best prospect? Is he the third offensive option? Is he fourth? Like where the hell does he fit on this team moving forward? Everything was great for him this season, but is he the guy that you go, we can't upgrade from this position, or he is absolutely this player and everyone else fits around him? And I'm not sure. Like I've still got him really high, but I couldn't really go much higher than this.
No, I couldn't either. And I think the main things are the age. He's 22-year-old, just finished his first season. And Oklahoma City is going to have not only a lottery pick this year, but I can't even tell you how many firsts over the next few years.
It's like 30 over the next 6 years or something. Isn't it? Something crazy like that.
Something like that. No big deal. Just a whole another G League team of lottery players. So do they hit on somebody that is potentially better than him? That's a very realistic possibility. But I think as of now, looking at what they have, he's a guy that is going to not necessarily need a ton of shots, but he's going to be efficient when he gets those shots. And the steals are just pretty hard to find at this point. So he was over the last 2 months, I think led the league in steals per game, just ridiculous, consistent 3 or 4 steal games. So I think efficiency in steals has him top 10 despite the age.
Steals are an interesting indicator for future value. They are pretty good in terms of overall real life value, but as some of my studies have shown, in terms of year-to-year consistency with steals, it's the least consistent stat. It varies quite a bit year to year, and all it takes is going from 1.6 steals to 1.2 steals, which is still a really good number, to drop your 30 spots in rankings. And when you are fueled by a low volume stat, which is what steals are, there can be quite a bit of discrepancy in your overall production and value. And again, like if they say Chet comes back and they get Brandon Miller in the draft, and there's Gideon Shea and there's Chet, like where does it all fit together? Like that ends up being like a little bit squishy of a problem. For as good as he's been, does he settle in as like a guy that might be the 5th offensive option or 4th offensive option? Then you're relying upon him as a steals specialist who might average 14 points. And that's probably worst case scenario. We've got him really high. But, he was a guy that was producing unbelievable value down the stretch, yet we've got 10 and 9 guys, respectively, ahead of him in this list. At number 9, I had Alperen Şengün. At number 9, you had Scotty Barnes. And I look at this, and I don't feel good about having Şengün at number 9. I think, again, that's what happens with all these lists you do. You look at them, you do it, and you go, all right, done. And you go back and look the next day, and you go, am I stupid? Look, what am I doing? Like, these are all wrong. No way that this is right. So I look at this one with Şengün and go, I don't know. But we saw, if a situation, back to the Rockets again, Noah, like, get a coach that knows what he's doing. The ball is in his hands a little bit more. This is top 20 guy, and he is young. Like, he's not even 21 yet. He's had 2 years experience and not even 21. And we saw, without Kevin Porter pounding the ball, he was rocketing up, putting up huge numbers. Defensively, he had struggles at times. He wasn't as bad as some may have, but he was pretty bad at times. But also, if the offense is this good, then we already know who the number 1 player in fantasy basketball is the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not saying he's Jokic, but he's not huge amounts off it. Like, there is a chance of that. But there's also a chance that he just gets completely replaced in the rotation and the coach doesn't believe in him and the front office doesn't love what we see. So it's sort of a hedge for me to say, I love what he does. The skill set is undeniable, but I need other people to buy in on it.
It'll take the right situation, I think, for sure. I think you could definitely look at it as, wow, that was way too high. Why did I rank him at 12? Why did you rank him at 9? But, I mean, after this season, we could think, dang, that was way too low. He definitely has that level of talent. It just really depends on what Udoka is going to do with him and how much is he going to put the ball in his hands. I was trying to look before this to see if Al Horford and Robert Williams got a ton of assists, but nothing too outrageous. But I don't know if they're really the passing talent that Şengün can be.
Oh, no.
Will Udoka run the offense through Şengün the way we've been kind of begging Steven Silas to do? the fantasy upside's, the sky.
Yeah. Now, I tried to do these rankings. I was developing a formula based on production, experience, age, a whole bunch of different things, right? Darko metrics, advanced metrics with some forward-thinking views. And when I did it, based on numbers, Şengün came out at number 4. I went, there's no way I can put him at 4. But that's the upside, right? If it all pans together, like that's where it's at number 4. So I pushed him down to 9, just with a bit of subjectivity. But that's how high my numbers put him out at. And again, I don't buy that, but it definitely was eye-opening to me. That brings us to Scotty Barnes, who I had at 13, you had at 9. He's going to be 22 by the time next season starts. 2 years in, Rookie of the Year last year. Had some disappointing moments this season, but did improve as the season went on. And this Raptors team, I think, is going to be looking pretty different next season. Do they make him a full-time point guard? My worry with him is shooting. It's just going to always be shooting and usage. Can you get enough usage and can you hit enough shots? And for a guy with this elite defensive reputation, can you get defensive stats at any point? Like, do it somewhere. Like, do you even average a steal and a block this season? I don't think he did. I think he averaged like 0.7 steals, which is just, for a guy that's a defensive player and a low usage poor shooter, you need to do those things. And I just think that a lot of the reputation of Barnes, which soured a little bit this season, was higher than the production. But we still see the flashes there. Like, it still can come, and that's why we both got him. I didn't even expect him to have him at 13 when I did my initial list. So what do you see Barnes' upside as being? Do you think that they can turn him into a full-time point guard?
I don't know about necessarily a full-time point guard, but I think just a secondary playmaker will be enough for him to, if he can get over 5 assists per game. You mentioned the 1 steal, 1 block per game threshold. I think he can get above that, improved efficiency. I'm just a really big Scotty Barnes fan. That's probably why I had him at 9. But I just think he can kind of do a little bit of everything for category leagues. The efficiency, is that going to come with an increased role? Is that going to kind of stay where it is? I think there are a few questions. For me, it's more of just kind of like a vibes factor.
I get that completely. And yeah, part of it, everyone knows that I hate Scotty Barnes and I hate Raptors fans because they're all trash and they all suck. And all you Raptors people, I'm glad that you guys had a bad season because you're just the worst. And that's exactly why I put Barnes down this low, because I just hate everything Canadian, especially poutine. You guys are disgusting and I shouldn't have any sort of positive things to say about you. But I think all those things are real issues there with Barnes that we have to see solved, and he's shown flashes of it, but can he ever put it all together to be that consistent high-level guy? Now, this next player, I had him high. I had him at number 8, Josh Giddey. You had him 14. He's still only 20, which, again, second-year player. And there were a lot of people having a lot of concerns with Giddey. Can he ever shoot? What's he going to do? Is he part of their plan? And I would think that what he did, even though Jalen Williams was great, I think that what Giddey did this season, and I still think Williams probably is their second-best prospect outside of Chet, behind or player outside of Chet behind Shea. Giddey showed enough to me to go, yeah, no, you actually can be a starter on a really good team. He showed significant improvement in his shooting. He's still young. High rebound, high assist player who showed an ability to up usage and up efficiency is a pretty winning formula. And if that all comes together, this can be, I think, again, part of it, top of my list is, can you be a consistent top 20 player for 4 or 5 years? I think you can do it.
I guess I just question whether he's going to do the other things. Is he ever going to really provide anything defensively? Is he going to provide threes with any sort of consistency, or just not even consistent, just kind of provide some? I mean, he averaged a 3 per game, 0.7 steals, 0.4 blocks per game. Is he going to get enough points, rebounds, or assists to make up for that? Or is he going to add a little bit of those things? I don't know how much more he's able to add playing alongside so much talent.
So he averaged 16.5, 8, and 6 this season with 0.7 steals. He hit a 3 a game, which was actually the same amount as Jalen Williams. So we can talk about him not hitting threes. Williams hit 1 3 a game as well. He's a year and a half younger than Jalen Williams. Yes, there are some percentage issues, but 48 and 74 is not bad. And it was a big improvement from where he was. I just think that all it takes is 0.7 steals going to 1 steal. Don't need much. 1 3 going to 1.5 threes. And then you're almost looking at like a 19, 8, and 7 player, which is pretty useful to me. I really like what I saw from him. I thought the big steps he took forward this season were important to note. And I have him at 8. But again, I was much higher on him in his draft class than almost anybody apart from Sam Presti. But we had him in exactly the same spot because I had him at number 6. So we both had him there. So I am a little bit higher on him as a general rule. At number 7, I had Paolo Banchero. You had Paolo at 8. And then you had Walker Kessler at 7. So Walker Kessler I had already on my list at number 10, but let's talk, should we talk Paolo or... No, let's talk Paolo first. You had him at 8, I had him at 7, he's 20, first-year player. Obviously, people who play category leagues will be like, well, he killed you. He's just a bad category league player, too many turnovers, bad field goals, bad free throws. And I would say if I was in Dynasty leagues with those guys, just give him to me. Like, if you don't actually think he's going to be good, give him to me. They might never fix those things, but they could. Blake Griffin's percentages were pretty bad when he started, especially his free throws, and they became good. And Blake Griffin became a borderline first-round player. And I don't think there's any debate that at some point Paolo will be able to put together semi-efficient, average efficient seasons while scoring big, getting good assists, getting good rebounds. Defensive stats will ever be huge? I don't think so, but I actually think he can offset that pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I went in my notes. I wrote down, I don't think he's ever going to give you much defensively, but he's a guy that can average 25, 10, and 5 on improved efficiency from this rookie season where he won Rookie of the Year. The sky's the limit. Again, Orlando has 9 lottery guys, and they're going to add 2 more this season or something. So, But Banchero's kind of the face of the franchise right now, unless they get Wembanyama.
Yeah, and him and Wemby together is fine. Like, it works. Like, there's no problem with that whatsoever. And you say 25, 10, and 5. Like, if I had to set that as being like, say, an average over the next 5 years, I'd go higher. I'd say he's more likely to peak at a 28-point season versus a 25 and average maybe 26 and a half. If he averaged 29 a game, I don't think I'd be shocked. Like, doing this as a rookie, 20 points per game, getting to the line as much as he did with all that load on him, no significant assistance in terms of veteran players, and Franz was really good, obviously. But I just think that if we buy into the rank of where he was like 200th or something in 9 category leagues and base that on how you're going to value him. Now, this is also part of my initial thought. Like, in 3 years' time, he might be the same efficiency guy, and I go, well, it's just RJ Barrett, guys. Like, yeah, it's not getting better. But I don't know that. And I am banking on improvement from him, and he showed a lot more than RJ Barrett did as a rookie. So I think there is plenty of room for him to get better here. And I am what he did was very impressive. Now, Walker Kessler, you had him at 7, I had him at 10. He was awesome down the stretch. Part of why I'm not skeptical on him, obviously. Like, I've got him at number 10. He's going to start and play big minutes for a long time to come on this Jazz team. But in terms of overall production, it is very narrow. It's great blocks, it's great field goals, it's great rebounds, and I'm not sure what else it is. And to me, that limits, and some of the ranking algorithms will push that really high. But when you are a 3-category guy, which, unless I'm missing another category, you're a 3-category guy, to me, that does limit some of your overall upside.
It definitely does. And I know the free throw numbers weren't great as well, but the blocks were absolutely just so insane. He had a 8.6% block percentage as a rookie. That is the 16th best block percentage in a single season all time.
Yep.
Rudy Gobert's best season was 7.4%. So I'm not saying he's the same defender that Rudy Gobert was during his Defensive Player of the Year seasons, but if he's a guy that can get double-digit rebounds, shoot a high percentage, and the block numbers, I mean, league leading potentially. So I think that's why I have him as high as he did, because of how rare shot blockers or consistent shot blockers can be.
I think I agree with that shot blockers are rare, but you compare that to like a Miles Turner or a Jaren Jackson, for example, who have the ability to block 3 shots per game, the same as Kessler. Both of those guys conceivably could be, well, Jaren Jackson very easily could be 20-point per game scorers in the right situation and hit 2.5 threes per game and do just a little bit of something else in there. Now, Kessler has a huge advantage in his field goal percentage, pretty obviously over those guys, but there is that little bit of extra offensive upside that they provide. Now, if I go back and look at my list here, like I had him at 10 and Şengün at 9, like it to me is really, really clear that if I wanted safety, like Kessler is the safe, better player here. Like he is going to be, I think, ranked more likely than not better than Şengün for a period of time. But I also think that the heights that Şengün can reach are probably higher than what Kessler can reach, and that's just a difference of approach. If I wanted, like, man, I need blocks and I need to be safe here, Kessler's going to do it. No problem with that. But can he ever push to that, hey, this is a guy that actually changes how my team is? Are they a playoff team or are they a perennial contender? I think Şengün's got that higher upside in that sort of a view of it. At number 6, I had Evan Mobley. At number 6, you had Chet Holmgren. And then at number 5, I had Chet Holmgren. And at number 5, you had Evan Mobley. Let's talk about Evan Mobley. He's 22 really soon, 2 years in. Showed some real struggles early on, the first month or so, but I think people then need to understand that after that it was just business as usual, and he showed an ability to get more usage. I think, not that the playoffs mean everything, but Jarrett Allen was quite poor, and the future of this team is Evan Mobley at center, and Evan Mobley at center is a top 15 fantasy player, I would say.
I would definitely say, playing alongside Jared Allen, he was, I believe, a Defensive Player of the Year finalist, if I'm not mistaken.
Finished third, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So, Jared Allen, do they move off from him and move Mobley to center after the season? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, I doubt it this season.
Yeah, I'd say probably not. But eventually, and that's when the dominant rebounding block numbers are going to come in. The main questions around him are the free throw percentage, but I think he does enough everywhere else to basically make up for that.
Yeah, it's not bad enough. It's not 60% on 7 attempts. It might be like 70% on 4 attempts, which is still not great, but like 20 and 10, 4.5 assists, 2 blocks. Is it possible? What's the most unlikely part of that? Is it the 20 points? Probably. Like everything else, look, easy, I would say. He's actually like...
I would say for sure.
So if we just talk real life redraft, I had him at 2 in that draft. I would still have him at 2, but would you consider having him at 1?
I wouldn't, but it's just because I am one of, if not the biggest Cade Cunningham fans there is.
Cool.
But in many other drafts, yes. But I think just because of how big of a fan of Cade I am, no.
I had him clearly at 2 in that draft, and I was pretty critical of Houston for not taking him, and I think that's, at this point, is proven correct. We'll see what happens over the next few years. Let's go to our number 5, or my number 5 player, your number 6 player. That's Chet Holmgren. Experience 0. He hasn't played. He's 21, but this is a player that I think is going to come out and put up probably top 50 numbers straight away next season. He's going to score, rebound, shoot threes, be good with percentages, block shots, get some steals. Like, this is a absolute fantasy stud in the making. Are we worried about injury? I think we should be worried about anyone who's tall getting injured, but we haven't seen him, and this is how high we rank him. He hasn't played, but we both have him in our top 6. I'm sure people will push back on that because they haven't seen it, but I actually don't care. To me, he's pretty clearly here.
Yeah, just everything he can do, what he showed in college, what he showed in Summer League before the kind of freak injury, definitely worthy of top 6 for me. The reason I have Mobley above him is because I've seen Mobley do it.
Yep,
and just because Chet hasn't played yet, that's why I have him below. But I think there's a very real chance that he's higher than this, and I'm going to have an issue with me having him this low by the end of the season.
I can see that, but our top 4 is pretty stacked, and our top 4 is actually identical. At number 4, you say you're the biggest Cade Cunningham fan. Well, I'm equal, because we both had him at number 4. Now, it wasn't a great season from Cade, but I talked about this when I went through the Pistons season preview early in the season. Yes, he finished whatever he finished, but do we really believe that a 10-game sample of him shooting 29% from 3 is who Cade Cunningham is? Like, every other number that he put up was an improvement over his rookie season, but everyone would tell you how much of a disaster this year was for Cade and how bad he was and he regressed, but everything else improved. The shot just didn't go in. And maybe it never goes in at an elite rate. I just know that it's not going to be he's not going to be a 29% three-point shooter and a 41% shooter overall over the course of the season. So this is a great time, I think, Noah, to try and buy low on Cade in a dynasty draft. If people are actually, I'm not sure about this guy. I think that this is a 26, 6 and 7 type of player as we move forward. And I think he's a little bit out of our minds because we didn't see much of him this season.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the recency bias of him not playing very well when he did. Like you said with Banchero, if anybody's in a league with me and doesn't want Cade, I'll just take him. Mm-hmm. I'll take him off your hands. He can do everything. I think that he's going to be, you said 27, 6 and 7. I could definitely see even higher than that. Defensive numbers, much better shooting than he showed. I don't think there's anything he can't do. So yeah. There's not much more for me to say.
I think there's perennial top 20 here, maybe. I don't know if he's ever a top 10 player, but I wouldn't be shocked. And the interesting thing is that both of us, again, had the same top 4 in the same order, but the top 3 for both of us were all from the same draft class. They're all a little bit older, and I think this does lean into, we have seen it. You have done it. And we talk about Anthony Edwards, both of us at 3. He's not yet 22. He will be by the start of the season. He's 3 years in. He started out slowly this season and then was slow when he returned from his ankle injury. But there's a whole package here of him, and I think the other guys on the list, who everyone's going to know who they are, that these are all potential top 10 players. Some of them have already had top 10 type seasons. But Edwards can do steals, blocks. He can score. He can hit threes. He can be efficient. He hasn't shown it yet. He can rebound. It's almost a complete package.
Yeah, and I think in their, play-in games, if I'm not mistaken, play-in games. Yeah, he or I guess no, it was the first round series against Denver as well. He showed that this is kind of his team. It's not Ant and Cat. It's Anthony Edwards with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert and whoever else you want to put alongside him. He's the face of the franchise. He's going to have dominant scoring numbers, and he's going to also get it done defensively. He was an all-star injury replacement this season. I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't an all-star starter next year.
Starter. Wow, that's bold. I didn't know you were going to go with a starter there. He was great.
Oh, yeah.
And I think part of the reason that's keeping him at 3 here behind the other two is he hasn't shown an ability to be a high volume free throw shooter or high percentage. It's like 78. And if he's doing that at 86, then we're in a different situation because it's an extra couple of points, but it's also a huge boost in that category. And he had some shakiness in terms of just some inconsistency throughout the season. Our top 2, again, it's really easy to know who they are. It's Tyrese Haliburton at 2 and LaMelo Ball at number 1 was the way we went through it. So let's talk Tyrese. We both had him at 2. He's older than both Ant and LaMelo. And people will say, look, okay, well, he was clearly the best fantasy option out of this group this season. No one debates that. But again, he's a year and a half older than those other two. I would have if you had to come in and said you had Tyrese number 1, I'd have no problem with that discussion whatsoever. What does he do more than what he did this season is, I guess, a fair question. Like, where can he ever ramp into a big usage guy? Or if they got a Scoot Henderson or a Brandon Miller, like, does he take a usage step back? That's, I guess, marginally a concern for me, but he's proven what he can do. He's probably a top, at worst, 15 player for the next 5 to 8 years, I would guess. And I don't think there should be too much argument with him at 2.
Not at all. I mean, dominant steals, dominant threes, dominant assists, doing it at his age, even if he is slightly older than LaMelo and Anthony Edwards. I still think, like you said, 8 years of top 15, top 10 value. That's okay to have top 2.
Oh, absolutely. And then number 1, it is LaMelo Ball. People say, well, Josh, he got injured all the time. How can you have him number 1? I don't care. Like, he sprained his ankle. He re-sprained his ankle. He broke his ankle. Like, I think you can see the relationship between a lot of those injuries, and I just think that he'll get healthy next season. And even this season, like, he struggled a little bit with some efficiency, but still was absolutely just putting up huge numbers in his minimal games that he played. He is the same age as Anthony Edwards, 21. I can understand having either Anthony or Tyrese ahead of him, but to me, it's LaMelo. I have no problem with that. He was going top 10 in all the Dynasty startups before this season. He was probably going top 5, to be honest. And I don't think that's outrageous to suggest like this could be. Okay, and we talk about, are you set? Like, the Hornets are set. Like, he is their guy. There's no concern about that. And you can say the same with Edwards. I guess you could say the same with Haliburton as well. But he's set. The fantasy skill set is there. Points, threes, rebounds, assists, free throws. He can be efficient. He can get steals. Like, there's very little that he can't do.
Yeah, I think that there's top 5 seasons ahead of him. I think the reason that I have him at 1, Haliburton at 2, even though Haliburton might be kind of the safer option, I think LaMelo has more upside. I think he's got top 5 seasons while Haliburton has top 10. That's the main reason I have him ahead of Hallie.
I agree completely. Now, I've kept you way too long here, Noel, but I do have one last question for you. I think I know what the answer is going to be, but let's hypothetically extend this out to the 2023 draft class. LaMelo's not number 1, is he? Or is he?
I think he might still be 1.
Oh,
but I think Wembanyama would be 2. I think LaMelo would have to be 1 for me, just because, like we've kind of talked about, I've seen it in the NBA, but the upside is still there. He's still young enough. I think that'll definitely sound foolish at the end of next season. It's very realistic, but I'd have LaMelo 1 for now.
That's fair enough, because again, I don't have Matt's Dynasty ADP data or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure LaMelo has a 3 or 4, and Wembanyama, I think in his rankings, might have been at number 8 in that list. I would have Victor at number 1. I know I haven't seen him, but I don't care. Like, I just that level, that is. Go back and look at Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robertson fantasy ranks over their career. It's like 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2. And I'm not saying Victor's going to be that, but when you have a skill set that might equate to something so similar to that, it's pretty hard for me to pass up on it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a top 5 guy for years. I think it's just because there's a little bit of that he's 7'4" and could just have injuries no matter what they do to try and prevent it. That 3% chance that happens is enough for me to have LaMelo over him just for right now.
Before I let you go quickly, who, if you have the list in front of you, who were the guys that just missed out on your top 25?
I mean, Shaedon Sharp, Jaden Ivey were two. Kind of just deleted them off my list, so I actually don't have the other guys.
I'll give you the 6 guys that I had out who were probably close to making it. It was Mathurin, Sohan, AJ Griffin, Jaden Hardy, Emmanuel Quickley, and Keegan Murray. So a lot of first-year players there, and then Quickley as, I think he's 24. So he probably would have made it in quickly if he had been like 2 years younger, but I worry about how the Knicks are going to use him and where he sits from there. But Mathurin, Sohan, Griffin, Hardy, Quickly, and Keegan Murray were the guys that I had. And that's just not even including guys like Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Jaden McDaniels, Cam Thomas, Dyson Daniels, Isaiah Jackson, John Kuminga. Like there's just a bunch of, and even like, some random guys like Peyton Watson and players like that who flashed a little bit. Quentin Grimes. There's so many interesting players there. So getting to a top 25 was pretty hard. Noah, plug what you need to plug, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah, I'm still putting out content for NBC Sports Edge and Roto World. You can find me on Twitter at NoahRubin22. My Substack, I believe, is just noahrubin.substack.com. And then I've started doing the Tank Me Later podcast. I think 3 episodes so far, a 4th one coming on Friday with a pretty cool guest I'm excited about.
Go and subscribe to that podcast and check out all of Noah's stuff. Noah, thank you for coming on and chatting Dynasty with me.
Absolutely, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Guys, follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And if you're here on YouTube, you thumb it up and you leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.